There wasn't a whole lot of competition in 2022 that I recall. I could be wrong. I have to go back and look for when we had Dominion that came out. And Dominion also had the original cast in there, which gave it some nostalgia bait to bring in. I don't think this thing is going to have that. I think it had a little bit unexpected, better weekend, but there's just not a lot of room after this thing for it to run. Renegade Online. Universal Domestic Distribution Chief Jim Ward this morning said, Jurassic World Rebirth is the perfect summer blockbuster, an epic, edge-of-your-seat adventure with an incredible cast, visually stunning direction, a thrill ride that is the very best of what the theatrical experience can offer. The net $180 million production. Now, D'Alessandro, again, this is not the first time he's done this. Recently, I've been seeing this pop up. The net $180 million production. So considering the last two Jurassic Park movies, we saw the information from Forbes magazine and Caroline Reed that combined, there was nearly $1 billion of expenses that were attributed to the production entity that housed Dominion and Fallen Kingdom, or at least the combination of the two. So for this to come in so much cheaper, I guess good for them. But one of the reasons I think is mentioned, I believe, next up in this article, the net $180 million production, which was shot in Thailand, Malta, and at Sky Studios in the UK. Now, I don't know if they've shot I don't know. Honestly, I can't remember where they've shot previous iterations of Jurassic Park. I always assumed that they were, shooting them, I think, somewhere down around South America or something like that. But I can't imagine that shooting in Thailand or Malta is a terribly expensive endeavor. Maybe they have shot there before, although I don't know why then the last ones were so expensive compared to this one. But they got a $150 million co-marketing value from promotional partners that included Jeep, Dr. Pepper, Quaker, M&M's, 7-Eleven, Scarlett Johansson's skincare brand. I didn't even know she had one. Now, I want people to understand here that promotional partnerships, okay, that $150 million value, that's other people that are using the Jurassic World brand to help market their own products. But it puts the name out there, right? It's not anybody, it's not a spend on behalf of the studio. And that is not in lieu of the studio or the distributor, in this case, Universal, spending real cash on internet marketing, television advertising, so on and so forth. That is still part of the game. And for a movie like this, honestly, they probably spent $125 million plus in cash to market this sucker. So it's still a very expensive movie. Let's go back here and let's take Anthony D'Alessandro at his word, because I don't think we have any current data, or at least anywhere near complete data on this movie just yet, in terms of cost, in terms of what Forbes has been able to usually dig up. And since it does have a UK production entity, then we should have something, right? But I think the last two films were the last report that Caroline got on this. So let's assume for a second that they only spent $300 million total. All right, net production and then marketing expense. I think it's probably going to wind up being more. So this movie needs to get somewhere around $600 million to bust even. It's well on its way. All right, even if it needs to get to $800 million, right? If they spent $300 million and $100 million on marketing or something like that, it's still well on its way. All right. So that's where we're at currently with this. And it is something that it's impressive, as much as I did not like this film, as much as I did not at all care for this movie. But let's look at some of the actual numbers breakdown here. So let me switch over to the numbers. Actually, I'm going to bring this up first. Let's go here. We've got these four rather. Let's take a look at what we're talking about. Let me expand this real quickly here. Jurassic World. All right. Forget the production budgets for a second. Well, I want to look at that right now because we know some of those numbers in there are radically incorrect. But what we've got here, what we want to look at is domestic openings. $208 million roughly for the first one in 2015, $148 million in 2018, and $145 million in 2022, $91.5 million in 2025 for the latest. So we do get true 3-day weekend breakdowns for each. Now, we can add in the extra money because it was a 5-day open. One of those days was Friday, July 4th. 147 would be it. So it puts it a little bit right. That 5-day open puts it unadjusted in line with Fallen Kingdom and Dominion. But that, again, that's a 5-day, not a 3-day. So there seems to be a lot of drop back unless we're going to see this thing leg out much bigger. If you look at this, I still think, and this is going to depend a lot on what we see next weekend. Superman's going to open up, and it's going to take a lot of the wind out of the sails. Like I said, Superman is going to get, I think, preferential treatment into IMAX with almost complete certainty. It's going to eat up some of the PLF screens out there that aren't listed as IMAX. This movie has really got to bang out a hell of a, set of weekdays this week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because by the time Friday comes around, it's all over but the crying. Because again, whether Superman's going to be good or bad, it is going to take a lot of the wind out of the sails for this. This box office is getting crowded. The other side of this is that, can it sustain beyond that? Now, if you remember a few days ago on Wednesday last week, when we had our Wednesday live show and we were coming into the release of Jurassic World, what I said was, based on the projections coming into the weekend, then it looks like it's going to follow suit. And it may still, even with this unexpected overperformance over the 5 days. And that was, if you look at the worldwide box office drop from the first to the third, 1.6 million, 1.6 billion, 1.3 billion, and then 1 billion. Dropped 300 from the first to the second, dropped another 300 from the second to the third. This one looks like it may well follow suit. I think 750 is probably still somewhere around the top end for this, just because of all the additional pressure that is going to be coming in with competition for this film. There wasn't a whole lot of competition in 2022 that I recall. I could be wrong. I have to go back and look for when we had Dominion that came out. And Dominion also had the original cast in there, which gave it some nostalgia bait to bring you in. I don't think this thing is going to have that. I think it had a little bit unexpected, better weekend, but there's just not a lot of room after this thing for it to run. I still think that based on what we've seen in the previous movies, that a 2.5x is still reasonably well on the table. And that's about what the last two did. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, you look at its domestic opening compared to where it finished. You look at Dominion from where it started to where it finished, 2.5 to 2.75. You look at where this is now, and again, the opening weekend, it's deceptive because it was a 5-day, not a 3-day. But that's where I'm still coming up with, I think, around 750 million. Now, this could surprise and just linger in theaters, but I don't think it will. I don't see a reason why people are going to keep going back to this because, again, the whole purpose of seeing a movie like this in the theaters is to go see it on the big screen. Well, if it's going to be losing a chunk of PLFs this coming weekend to Superman, which it will, and at the same time, it's going to have little to no access at any point to IMAX, because of F1 and because of Superman, where's it going to go? So look, that's about where that is for me. We'll see if this grinds out even a little bit further, but I'm not seeing where the long legs for this. I'm not seeing where this gets to $1 billion again. I'm just not. And in 2025 for a Jurassic movie, that should be something that is pretty doable. This is one of these big, major, traditional Hollywood massive franchises. $1 billion in 2025 should be a relatively easy thing to do considering the insane ticket prices. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.